silent as Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stepped up to the microphone, her emerald green suit standing in stark contrast to the dark wood paneling of the Congressional hearing room. Cameras clicked frantically, capturing the intensity in her eyes as she faced Pam Bondi across the polished table. 017, just moments earlier, Bondi had been confidently dismissing allegations about misappropriated funds, her voice steady as she called the investigation a political witch hunt. But Crockett hadn't come empty-handed. She clutched a sealed manila envelope, the edges crisp and official. "Miss Bondi," Crockett began, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. 039, you've sat there claiming transparency while hiding a $500 million secret from the American people. Today, that ends. The room erupted. Committee members shifted in their seats. Reporters frantically typed on their phones, and Bondi's face, previously composed and confident, flashed with a millisecond of pure panic before she regained her practiced smile. 101, she didn't know what Crockett had uncovered, but whatever was in that envelope made her grip the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. This wasn't just another congressional hearing. This was about to become the political showdown of the year. And in the next few minutes, Pam Bondi's carefully constructed facade would completely crumble live on national television. 120, before diving into this explosive story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more breaking political coverage you won't see anywhere else. Pam Bondi's reputation preceded her in Washington. The former Florida Attorney General had built her career on projecting an image of unwavering integrity. 139, her blonde hair was always perfectly styled, her designer suits impeccable, her voice commanding respect in any room. After serving as Florida's first female Attorney General for 8 years, she had smoothly transitioned to the national stage, becoming a trusted advisor to influential politicians and appearing regularly on major news networks. 159, Bondi had mastered the art of political survival, weathering minor controversies with practiced damage control. When questions arose about her campaign donations or lobbying ties, she consistently deflected with polished talking points about her dedication to public service. Her supporters viewed her as a tough-on-crime conservative champion who spoke hard truths. 217, her critics saw a calculating political operator who protected powerful interests. Across the hearing room sat her unexpected challenger, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett from Texas. At 42, Crockett represented a new generation of lawmakers. The former civil rights attorney had burst onto the national scene after a viral moment defending voting rights. 239, unlike Bondi's carefully cultivated image, Crockett was known for her authenticity and direct approach. Her questioning during congressional hearings regularly generated headlines for cutting through political doublespeak. Is Crockett playing political games? Bondi had told reporters that morning outside the Capitol. This committee was formed with a clear agenda to attack conservatives and I'm simply their latest target. 303, she'd smiled confidently for the cameras, waving away questions about alleged financial irregularities, but behind the scenes, tensions were high. The hearing had been called after whistleblowers raised questions about a $500 million government contract awarded to Gulfstream Solutions, a company with suspected ties to Bondi during her time as Attorney General. 323, the committee had been investigating for months, but solid evidence had remained elusive until now. For Crockett, this wasn't just political theater. As she would later explain, when $500 million taxpayer dollars disappear into friendly pockets, that's not a Democrat or Republican issue. That's corruption, plain and simple. 342, the stakes couldn't be higher. If Crockett's allegations proved true, it wouldn't just end Bondi's career. It could trigger one of the largest corruption investigations in recent political history, potentially implicating officials across multiple states. For Bondi, everything she had built over decades of careful political maneuvering hung in the balance of the next few hours. 404, the committee chairman, Congressman Hayes, called the room to order. This hearing will come to order. We're here today to continue our investigation into the awarding of the Gulfstream Solutions contract and related matters. He turned to Crockett. Congresswoman Crockett, you have 10 minutes for questioning. As Crockett opened the manila envelope, the room went completely silent. For 26, Bondi shifted slightly in her seat, maintaining her composed expression, but those sitting closest to her noticed a slight tremor in her hand as she reached for a water glass. No one realized they were about to witness a moment that would be replayed on news channels for weeks to come. Miss Bondi, Crockett began, her voice measured but firm. For 45, I'd like to start by establishing some facts. She placed a document on the overhead projector displaying a timeline of the Gulfstream Solutions contract approval. You've testified previously that you had no involvement with Gulfstream before, during, or after this $500 million contract was approved. Is that correct? Bondi leaned toward her microphone. 508, that's correct, Congresswoman. As I've stated multiple times, I had no personal or professional relationship with Gulfstream or its executives. Crockett nodded, seemingly accepting the answer. Then you've also testified that you've never personally benefited from any state contracts awarded during your tenure as Florida Attorney General. 527, correct. Absolutely correct, Bondi replied, a hint of irritation creeping into her voice. I've devoted my career to public service, not personal enrichment. The room remained tense as Crockett methodically laid groundwork, displaying public records of the contract approval process. Committee members watched with varying degrees of interest. 550, Democrats leaned forward attentively. Republicans checked their watches or shuffled papers, seemingly confident this was just another political performance. Then the first unexpected turn came. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit 43, Crockett announced, sliding a document to the chairman. This is an email from Gulfstream CEO Richard Thornton to his board of directors dated 3 weeks before the contract announcement. 614, as the email appeared on screens around the room, Bondi's expression flickered. The message referenced a special arrangement with our Florida friend that would ensure smooth sailing for the contract approval. Miss Bondi, are you the Florida friend mentioned in this email? Crockett asked. Bondi's attorney leaned over to whisper something, but she waved him off. 636, Congresswoman, I can't possibly know who Mr. Thornton was referring to in a private email I wasn't party to. There are thousands of people in Florida government. Crockett didn't press, simply nodding. Fair enough. Let's move on. She displayed another document, a calendar entry showing a lunch meeting between Bondi and Thornton 6 months before the contract award. 658, can you explain this meeting that apparently never happened? The room stirred. Bondi's practiced composure slipped momentarily before she recovered. I have hundreds of meetings every year. This was a routine lunch with various business leaders discussing Florida's economic climate. Nothing specific about Gulfstream was discussed. 719, Republican committee members jumped to Bondi's defense. Congressman Miller interrupted. Point of order. Mr. Chairman. The Congresswoman is badgering the witness with circumstantial evidence that proves nothing. I'm simply asking Miss Bondi to reconcile her statements with documented evidence. Crockett replied calmly. 737, the chairman allowed her to continue and Crockett methodically presented more pieces of the puzzle. Phone records showed calls between Bondi's office and Gulfstream. Meeting notes referenced AG approval and a series of contract amendments had bypassed normal review processes. With each new document, the atmosphere in the room shifted. 757, what had started as seemingly disconnected pieces was forming a troubling pattern. Even Republican members were now paying close attention, some looking uncomfortable. Miss Bondi, Crockett continued, I find it interesting that you've characterized this investigation as a witch hunt. Yet, these documents, all obtained through official channels, show a concerning pattern of communication and coordination that directly contradicts your sworn testimony. 822, Bondi's attorney whispered urgently in her ear. She took a sip of water, her hand now visibly shaking. Congresswoman, you're presenting selective information out of context. I stand by my testimony. Then came the moment that caused the first real crack in Bondi's facade. Crockett revealed bank records showing a series of offshore transactions connecting a subsidiary of Gulfstream to a company called Blue Harbor Consulting. 847, Miss Bondi, are you familiar with Blue Harbor Consulting? For the first time, Bondi hesitated before answering. I don't believe so. No. Crockett let the silence hang for a moment before responding. That's interesting because according to Florida corporate records, Blue Harbor Consulting was registered by your sister, Jennifer, 1 month before the Gulfstream contract discussions began. 912, cameras clicked frantically as Bondi's face flushed red. My sister has her own business dealings. I'm not involved in her professional life. So, you're stating under oath that you had no knowledge that your sister formed a company that received $145 million from a Gulfstream subsidiary after you helped approve their $500 million contract. 933, Crockett asked, her voice remaining even. The room erupted. The chairman banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Bondi's attorney demanded a recess, which the chairman granted. As they stood to leave, reporters shouted questions and committee members huddled with their staff. Bondi, visibly shaken, was escorted from the room by her legal team. 9:56, the confidence of her morning press conference completely evaporated. As the doors closed behind her, the cameras caught a final glimpse of her face. No longer the poised political operator, but someone realizing that her carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel, and Congresswoman Crockett had made it clear she was just getting started. 10:16, when the hearing reconvened after a 30-minute recess, the energy in the room had transformed completely. The gallery was now packed with journalists who had been covering other events, rushing over after word spread about the explosive revelations. Social media was already buzzing with clips of Bondi's shaken responses. Pam Bondi returned with an expanded legal team. 10:38, her hair and makeup had been refreshed, but the confident smile was gone. In its place was a tight-lipped determination, the look of someone preparing for battle rather than a routine hearing. Congresswoman Crockett, meanwhile, appeared completely calm as she organized a new set of documents before her. The chairman reminded everyone that she still had 4 minutes remaining in her questioning period. 10:58, Miss Bondi, Crockett began, during the break, my staff provided your counsel with copies of what I'm about to present, so nothing should come as a surprise. She glanced at Bondi's attorneys, who looked grim. Let's continue where we left off. The screens around the room displayed a complex chart showing money flows between multiple entities from Gulfstream to its subsidiary to Blue Harbor Consulting, then to several other companies, and finally to a Cayman Islands account. 11:26, for the committee's benefit, Crockett explained, I've spent the last 6 months working with forensic accountants to track the money from the Gulfstream contract. What we found was a sophisticated system designed to obscure the ultimate beneficiaries of these funds. She turned to Bondi. Miss Bondi, are you familiar with Seaside Holdings Limited in the Cayman Islands? Bondi conferred with her attorneys before answering. 11:51, on advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based on my Fifth Amendment privilege. A murmur ran through the room. Invoking the Fifth was technically her right, but politically devastating. Crockett simply nodded and continued. Let me be very clear about what our investigation has uncovered, she said, addressing the entire committee. 12:12, of the $500 million awarded to Gulfstream Solutions, approximately $42 million was diverted through this network of shell companies. Through banking records obtained via subpoena and with the cooperation of authorities in the Cayman Islands, we've confirmed that Seaside Holdings is beneficially owned by a trust that names Pam Bondi as the primary beneficiary. 12:31, the room erupted again. Cameras flashed frantically as reporters rushed to update their stories. Bondi's lead attorney stood to object, but Crockett wasn't finished. Mr. Chairman, I'm entering into the record Exhibit 72. A series of emails recovered from Richard Thornton's personal account pursuant to our committee subpoena. 12:51, the emails appeared on screen and the gallery gasped audibly. The messages dated throughout the contract negotiation period were direct exchanges between Thornton and Bondi discussing how to structure the deal to ensure our mutual benefits and maintain necessary distance. In one particularly damning email, Bondi had written, the Seaside arrangement works. 13:13, my team will never connect those dots as long as we keep Jennifer's role quiet. Miss Bondi, Crockett said, her voice now carrying an edge of controlled outrage. These emails directly contradict every statement you've made to this committee. They show you personally orchestrated a scheme to divert $42 million of taxpayer money to your own benefit. 13:33, would you like to amend your previous testimony? Bondi's facade finally crumbled completely. Her hands trembled as she reached again for her water glass, spilling it across her prepared remarks. Her attorney frantically tried to dab at the spreading stain with tissues while whispering urgently in her ear. I need a moment. 13:52, Bondi stammered, her voice barely audible. But Crockett pressed forward relentlessly. While Miss Bondi collects herself, she said, I want to be clear about the gravity of what we're seeing. This isn't a technical violation or an oversight. This is deliberate fraud against American taxpayers. A public servant who was elected to uphold the law instead manipulated it for personal gain. 14:15, Crockett turned directly to face Bondi. And Miss Bondi, we haven't even gotten to the offshore properties yet. At this, Bondi's composure broke entirely. Tears welled in her eyes. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. "You don't understand," she said, her voice cracking. "There were circumstances. There were pressures. 1438, I never meant for it to go this far." The chairman, recognizing the dramatic shift in the hearing, attempted to regain control. "Miss Bondi, are you all right to continue? Do you need a break?" Before she could answer, Crockett delivered the final blow. "Mr. Chairman, I have one more exhibit." She motioned to an aide who wheeled in a large poster board covered by a cloth. 1502, this morning, Miss Bondi called our investigation a witch hunt. She claimed we were pursuing her for political reasons. Crockett pulled away the cloth to reveal an enlarged photograph of a luxury villa on a tropical beach. "This is the $12 million property in the Turks and Caicos purchased by Seaside Holdings 3 months after the Gulfstream contract was finalized. 1522, Miss Bondi has spent 6 vacation weeks there in the past year alone." She turned to face Bondi directly. "This isn't about politics. This is about corruption, pure and simple." Bondi's face crumpled in full view of the cameras. The composed, powerful former Attorney General broke down, sobbing. "I can explain." 1543, she managed between breaths, but no explanation followed. Her lead attorney stood. "Mr. Chairman, my client is clearly distressed. We request an immediate recess." The chairman agreed, but the damage was done. As Bondi was led from the room by her legal team, her mascara streaked down her cheeks, her shoulders hunched in defeat. 1606, the cameras captured every moment of her collapse. Congressman Crockett remained at her seat, calm but resolute. The documents of her months-long investigation spread before her. In less than an hour, she had methodically dismantled one of the most powerful women in American politics. As the committee room cleared for recess, journalists rushed to file their stories, and committee members huddled in shocked discussions. 1630, Crockett simply gathered her papers and prepared for the next phase. The exposure was complete, but the repercussions were only beginning. Within minutes of Bondi's breakdown, video clips spread across social media like wildfire. Bondi breakdown and Crockett exposure became the top trending hashtags nationwide. News networks interrupted regular programming to show the dramatic confrontation on loop, with analysts scrambling to explain the significance of what had just transpired. 1659, the hearing never officially resumed after a closed-door meeting between Bondi's legal team and committee leadership. An announcement came that Bondi had been transported to a local medical facility for observation. Her spokesman released a brief statement citing exhaustion and dehydration, but no one was buying that explanation. 1716, by evening, all major networks led with the story. Breaking: former AG Pam Bondi implicated in $42 million corruption scheme flashed across screens nationwide. Political commentators from across the spectrum struggled to process the scale of the revelations. "What we witnessed today wasn't just the fall of Pam Bondi," said veteran political analyst Robert Chin on CNN. 1739, this could be the beginning of the largest public corruption investigation since Watergate. The implications are staggering. Congresswoman Crockett held a brief press conference on the Capitol steps as the sun began to set. The warm golden light was a stark contrast to the cold facts she had exposed. 1756, today wasn't a victory for me or for any political party, she told the assembled reporters. If anything, it's a sad day for American democracy, but it's also a necessary one. The American people deserve to know when their trust has been violated. When asked how she had uncovered the complex financial trail, Crockett revealed the painstaking process that had led to this moment. 1819, this investigation began with a single whistleblower, a mid-level accountant at Gulfstream, who noticed irregularities in the contract payments. My team followed every lead, reviewed thousands of documents, and worked nights and weekends for 6 months. We faced roadblocks at every turn. Subpoenas were fought, records were accidentally deleted, and witnesses were pressured to stay silent. 1842, she paused before adding, and I should note that this investigation isn't over. The money trail suggests that Miss Bondi wasn't acting alone. That statement sent another shock wave through Washington. Who else might be implicated? Speculation ran rampant as reporters pressed for details, but Crockett declined to name names, saying, only, the evidence will guide us where it needs to go. 1905, by the following morning, the Justice Department announced the formation of a special task force to investigate the Gulfstream contract and related matters. The FBI executed search warrants at Bondi's residences in Florida and Washington, as well as at the offices of Gulfstream Solutions and several related companies. Richard Thornton, the CEO of Gulfstream, was taken into custody at Miami International Airport while attempting to board a flight to Venezuela. 1930, his attorney released a statement indicating that Thornton was cooperating fully with authorities and was prepared to provide testimony regarding Miss Bondi's role in orchestrating the scheme. Bondi herself remained out of public view for 3 days before releasing a video statement from an undisclosed location. 1946, gone was the polished politician. The woman who appeared on screen looked exhausted, her face drawn, her voice hollow. "I want to apologize to the people of Florida and to all Americans," she began, reading from a prepared statement. "While there are aspects of Congresswoman Crockett's allegations that have been mischaracterized, I cannot and will not deny that I failed to maintain the ethical standards that public service demands." 2011, she stopped short of admitting criminal wrongdoing, but announced her resignation from all public and private positions, citing the need to focus on personal matters and mounting legal challenges. The political ramifications extended far beyond Bondi herself. As Crockett had hinted, the investigation quickly expanded to include other officials. 2030, within 2 weeks, subpoenas were issued to 3 former state officials in Florida who had served on the Contract Approval Board, 2 federal regulators who had expedited necessary permits, and a senior congressional staffer who had helped secure the federal funding. The case also spotlighted Congresswoman Crockett, thrusting her into a national spotlight. 2047, profile pieces highlighted her background as a civil rights attorney before entering politics, her methodical approach to the investigation, and her reputation for working across the aisle when principle demanded it. "Jasmine Crockett represents something increasingly rare in American politics," wrote the Washington Post editorial board. 2107, she pursued this investigation not because Bondi was a political opponent, but because corruption is corruption, regardless of party affiliation. Her approach was not to grandstand, but to meticulously build an irrefutable case. Social media transformed Crockett into an overnight sensation. Clips of her methodical questioning garnered hundreds of millions of views. 2127, young people particularly embraced her with TikTok flooded with remixes of her most devastating line set to dramatic music. A Gallup poll conducted 1 week after the hearing showed 76% of Americans, including 62% of Republicans, approved of how Crockett had handled the investigation. Public trust in Congress, typically abysmal, saw a modest but significant bump, suggesting Americans appreciated seeing a legislator doing actual oversight rather than partisan theatrics. 2156, the financial implications were equally significant. Trading of Gulfstream's parent company stock was temporarily halted after it lost 43% of its value in 2 days. The company's board fired its entire executive team and hired outside counsel to conduct an internal investigation, desperately trying to distance itself from the scandal. 2215, state officials in Florida announced a comprehensive review of all contracts approved during Bondi's tenure, pledging to implement new transparency measures and ethical safeguards. The state comptroller estimated that recovering misappropriated funds could ultimately return hundreds of millions to state coffers. 2232, perhaps most importantly, the scandal transcended typical partisan divisions. While conservative media initially attempted to frame the investigation as a political attack, the evidence Crockett presented was too overwhelming to dismiss. Even Bondi's strongest allies couldn't defend the luxury villa purchased with diverted taxpayer funds, noted one commentator. 2251, what we're seeing is rare in today's polarized climate, explained political scientist Dr. Maya Williams. A corruption scandal so clear-cut that it's uniting Americans in shared outrage rather than dividing them along partisan lines. People across the political spectrum recognize that $42 million in taxpayer money diverted to private offshore accounts is indefensible, regardless of party affiliation. 2314, 6 weeks after the hearing, Congresswoman Crockett addressed a packed auditorium at Georgetown University's School of Public Policy. Students and faculty gave her a standing ovation before she even spoke a word. "The Bondi investigation demonstrates something essential about democracy," she told the audience. "It's fragile." 2334, it requires constant vigilance, but it also has built-in mechanisms for correction when we have the courage to use them. She continued, "Many have asked me why I pursued this investigation when conventional wisdom said Pam Bondi was too powerful to touch. The answer is simple. No one should be above accountability. Not me, not you, and certainly not those entrusted with public power. 2357. As Crockett's words spread through news coverage and social media, they resonated with a public hungry for authentic leadership. Her approval rating soared, with many speculating about her future political prospects. Would she seek higher office or become a committee chair? For her part, Crockett deflected such questions, insisting her focus remained on completing the investigation and ensuring appropriate consequences. 2400 hours 21. For Pam Bondi, those consequences were swift and severe. A federal grand jury indicted her on 22 counts, including wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and tax evasion. If convicted on all counts, she faced up to 30 years in prison. Her legal team immediately began negotiating with prosecutors, suggesting she might be willing to implicate others in exchange for leniency. 2400 hours 46. The scandal continued to expand, touching multiple states and levels of government. Journalists dubbed it Stream Gate, with new revelations emerging weekly. Each new connection exposed reinforced the central theme of Crockett's investigation. Corruption flourishes in darkness but withers under scrutiny. 3 months after the hearing, a comprehensive ethics reform bill titled the Public Trust Restoration Act was introduced in Congress with bipartisan sponsorship. 25:12. The legislation, which directly addressed many of the loopholes exploited in the Gulfstream scheme, quickly gained momentum. Sometimes it takes a shock to the system to create meaningful change, said the bill's Republican co-sponsor at a joint press conference with Crockett. What happened with the Gulfstream contract was a betrayal of public trust that transcends political divisions. 25:32. This legislation is a first step toward rebuilding that trust. As the investigations, indictments, and reforms continue to unfold, the dramatic confrontation between Congresswoman Crockett and Pam Bondi became more than just a viral political moment. It became a case study in effective oversight, a reminder of the power of persistent investigation, and a rare example of accountability in an era often defined by its absence. 25:57. The American public, so accustomed to political figures escaping consequences, witnessed something they had almost forgotten was possible. A powerful figure held accountable in real time, not through partisan attacks or media spectacle, but through methodical exposure of documented facts. For Jasmine Crockett, who had entered the hearing room as a relatively unknown congresswoman and emerged as a symbol of governmental integrity, the work continued. 26:21. There were more documents to review, more witnesses to question, more connections to uncover. The $500 million secret she had exposed was likely just the tip of the iceberg. And for citizens watching from home, the message was clear. In a functioning democracy, no secret remains hidden forever. No power remains unchecked indefinitely. And sometimes, just sometimes, justice is served live on camera for all to see. 26:46. Thank you for watching this incredible story unfold. If you found this breakdown valuable, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on all our political analysis and breaking news coverage. The fight for transparency and accountability continues, and we'll be here to bring you every development as it happens.